everybody knows what it's like in those final minutes when it feels like nothing's going to work and nothing's going to come together, and somehow everything coalesces and people stop fighting and you create something.
It's a live show.
We're just not ready.
Doesn't matter that we're ready. It matters that it's 11:30. That's when we go on.
Ruben, what room
Yeah,
are you in? Why don't we just do this in person?
because I didn't bring my camera, so for me this is
Okay,
better when I have to edit. But I can
fair
take you
enough.
out after.
No, I'm just kidding. It's great. How are you?
I'm doing great, man.
Good, good.
You know, the beautiful thing, one of the beautiful thing about your film, it's that I have seen the movie with three different audiences. I watched it in New York with a private audience.
Hmm.
I watched it with the press, and then yesterday I watched it in Latin America, with Spanish speaking people,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and they all have this reaction. And I think it's magic because even people, audience, they don't know who is Saturday Night Live now. Like they don't know how important it is. They still enjoy the film. And my question is, why do you think that we needed to witness what happened that day?
It's a great question, and I'll be honest. My father always said, "Don't confuse your location for your plot." And I feel like Saturday Night Live is an important location, but more importantly, I wanted to tell the story of what it feels like to create something, and what it feels like at the last second when you're about to go live. And going live can mean anything. Going live can be uh, putting on a talent show or a high school musical, or it could be opening a restaurant. Everybody knows what it's like in those final minutes when it feels like nothing's going to work and nothing's going to come together, and somehow everything coalesces and people stop fighting and you create something. And I'm lucky. I grew up around that. I grew up on movie sets. I grew up watching people create things. And what I really wanted to do was make a movie that made the audience feel like they were part of the crew, like they were part of the cast and crew. And Saturday Night Live felt like the perfect vehicle to do that.
For me, I felt that I was in a tour and I was, yeah, because the camera floats with
Yes,
Lorne Michaels, mostly with Gabriel,
yes.
basically. And we're witnessing of everything that's going on. Like for me, his powers, his will of this thing goes right, even when he has to deal with all this situation. And how was that processing when you have to cast? Because this is something that a challenge for you. This is a huge cast. Even there's an actor
Yeah,
that has two
yeah.
characters. And how was that process of casting all these people? I know that you don't care about how obviously they have to look like one of those
Yeah,
actors, but there's some spark in each of them. My
yeah.
favorite, I have to say, is the writer, Michael. And
Michael O'Donoghue. Yeah, isn't he great? Yeah.
his humor is so on point, dark, and careless that
So dark. Yeah, 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 yeah.
I would love to have that. But
Yeah,
tell me, please, the processing of this casting.
yeah, I know. Michael O'Donoghue writes from the sixth circle of hell, and the man is a genius. Look, first I want to say, first, you brought up how the camera floats around, and that like goes down to the kind of that. I'm so happy you mentioned it because it goes to the detail of how we made this movie, which we didn't use a steady cam. We used what's called
Mm.
a matrix on a dolly, and the way that works is you have one person who pushes the dolly and another person who operates the camera on a remote head, and the result is this very specific way that the camera moves through the environment. And I just had to bring that up because you're the first person I've talked to who's noticed the way that the camera moves, and it was so specific and something that we organized for months in advance. It's not just an improvised steady cam who's looking around and finding things. We wanted the experience of the viewer to be so specific in the way that you just suddenly caught things. So anyway, I needed to point that out. But the cast was obviously deeply personal. I felt like the movie would succeed or fail based on how we cast. And I was very intimidated by the fact that we were going to cast 80 actors, and many of which are people that we know, like Billy Crystal and Chevy Chase. And I worked with an extraordinary cast director named John Papsadera, who does all the Christopher Nolan films. And we made a decision very early on that it was not our job to find impersonators. Because a lot of people would come in and they would do a Saturday Night Live style impersonation of these people. But what we wanted to do was capture the essence of who they were on opening night. Who is John Belushi when he's scared? Who is Chevy Chase when he's using his ego like a shield? Who is Dan Aykroyd when half of him thinks he's about to be a star, but half of him thinks he's on a plane back to Toronto? this is the moment that we cared about. And it's these actors, Dylan O'Brien, Corey Michael Smith, Ella Hunt, Matt Wood, who were able to capture that vulnerability and the essence of who that character was at the time. I'm really thrilled that you pointed out Tommy Dewey as Michael O'Donoghue, because Tommy, this is our third project together. And Tommy, when you talk about Tommy Dewey, what you're talking about is sound. Because what Tommy does is the sound and the rhythm. And I cast with my ears, not my eyes. For me, it's always, how do they sound? I often cast with my eyes closed, because if you believe the rhythm of how someone says something, if they understand how to play the music with their mouth, everything else doesn't matter. And so I tried to cast people who, it's like casting a band. It's like, how do the voices go together? And Tommy Dewey is a perfect instrumentalist.
How about editing? You were present when everything was in the process of cutting, because it's a movie that happens in real time. So you have to be very faithful to that. And as a director that you're a creator, it has to hurt when you have to cut some good shooting that you have, good sequences that you have. How do you create this with editing so it's precisely 90 minutes? Because I noticed that after I watched the movie, and then I say, okay, it's like 10:30. Wait, well, we started at 9, and everything happens in 90 minutes. So like, this is on point, because even with credits, it ends in 90 minutes. It's like watching this show that I love, 24, but it's 90 minutes. So this is a challenge also for editing.
100%. And it starts with the screenplay. The screenplay was exactly 100 pages at first, and we numbered the pages backwards. So the first page was page 100, and the next page was page 99, the next page was 97, 96, 95, 94. So we knew from the very beginning, we were creating a countdown. Then it's in the choreography. Choreography for months with a stopwatch and making sure that every scene is happening in real time. If you look at our script, all the dialogue doesn't go like this, the dialogue goes like this. There's people talking at the same time all the time. And then lastly, it's the music. John Batiste, our composer, was on set, creating the score on set, recording it on set. And so that score would come back into editing, and it created the heartbeat of the movie. So unlike a movie where the editors cut a scene and they give it to the composer and the composer just goes like this, this is a movie where the composer tells us the heartbeat, and it's frantic, and it changes, and it uses 3 different time signatures simultaneously, and the editors cut to John Batiste's heartbeat.
I mentioned that to John because 2 of my favorite scenes, it's basically music and just like body language. It's when Gabriel characters, Lorne Michaels, is talking over the phone with Johnny Carson, and he's waiting for John Belushi to come out. And the other one is the beauty thing about this film is like at the end, we know the Saturday Night Live has been there for 50 years, but still, we were tense. We were waiting for the go the Willem Dafoe characters were about to give.
And go live.
The music behind also was creating that tension with us. How did you create this with John Baptiste? Like, you guys watched the scene first, or he created the music and you had to adapt to this? Because also he told me that he used a lot of Latin music, what one calls salsa, because it was the 70s. So he inspired himself to create all this.
That's 100% correct. And all the original beats that we were talking about was a combination of Latin music and African music. So we have Fela Kuti from Africa, and then we have all these kind of Latin beats that were really important to us. And what's genius about John is that he can watch a scene. We'll show him an edit of a scene that we shot yesterday, and he'll immediately pick up any type of piece of percussion, and he's working these complicated rhythms. And then once that's happening, he goes over to a piano and he plays music in a completely different time signature. Now he's playing classical music on top of it. So when you talk about that moment leading up to Willem Dafoe saying "Go live," there's the heartbeat of the movie, but then he's going, he's doing arpeggios, classical arpeggios. And it's that tension between the two kinds of music that's happening. That's the kind of thing that only he does. And I'm trying to do that with the rest of the movie, but the heartbeat belongs to him.
Yesterday, talking with a group of mostly female, they were really inspired by this sequence when the female characters of Saturday Night Live, your actresses, they have a costume like men, and then they behave like men, like how men behave around women, and they felt that it's so real. And it's not the first time that I hear this from different screenings. And when you create the script, how do you choose what moment of that night you want to put on the screen?
Oh, it was so hard because we had so many moments. And you have to, the movie works geographically. The movie understands that the character needs to always be in a physical place inside one of the 8th or 9th floor. You're in a hallway, you're in a stairway, you're on a stage, you're in an elevator. And we're always asking ourselves, how many scenes can we fit simultaneously within that space? And so we knew every character. We're following 30 characters. There's 30 arcs in the movie. But unlike a regular movie where you get 20 points along the arc, we only get 3 or 4 or 5. And it became a question of how much can you hear simultaneously? And so we're constantly trying to just fit the dialogue over so that you are watching one person, listening to another person's coming through. And it's just, we were testing ourselves as we choreographed the movie of how much a person could pick up as they watched.
We don't talk enough about Cooper Hoffman and how good he is being
I
the
agree.
buffer.
He's a fucking genius, right?
Exactly. Like he's the buffer between the craziness and anxiety that Lorne Michaels has, Gabriel, and then the opposite. He has to be politics. He has to be this, I don't know, like white collar person.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he's on point. And I would love to know, like, how do you create this with him? This was something it was on the script. This is something intentional. This is something that you rehearse with him and those characters, because I don't think that we do talk enough about his presence on this film.
I agree. And I really appreciate you bringing him up. He is such a nuanced actor, and he's capable of doing so many things. We talk about John Batiste and his ability to do different time signatures at the same time. Cooper Hoffman is able to do multiple emotional time signatures at the same time. You feel his ego, you feel his vulnerability, you feel how much he wants to love the show, how much he wants to be a part of the young people, but he's not, how much he wants to be a part of the older rich people, but he's not. And he's the only character who feels like he's just torn between the worlds. And he holds all of it in a face or just a sound. He's like, you just feel even in his broken laughter, everything he does is gorgeous. And I was so lucky he said yes.
Even that sequence when he confront Gabriel's character, Lorne Michaels, that we can do this next week. We should do it. Like you feel his desperation because he wants this to work, but he don't have the vision that Lorne Michaels has. And it's not bad. It's not wrong because his job is that everything goes right. He don't take those risks. That's why Lorne Michaels took the risk. And I think that conversation is super important and beautiful because we learn a lot about those characters.
I totally agree. That scene of Lorne Michaels and Cooper, of Gabriel and Cooper fighting in the stairway, we always knew that's the heavyweight match of the movie. Like, that's it. It comes down to that scene. And watching that scene live was amazing. Like, you could feel both actors every day preparing for that scene. They knew like that was going to be it, and they come in with a full head of steam, and everyone on set was thrilled that day.
There's another sequence that really struck me, and I have to say it. I wasn't expecting. It was so raw. Is that confrontation that J.K. Simmons has with Chevy Chase's character about legacy, about ego, and then when he pulled out his penis in front of Chevy's girlfriend, that it's like this old power from Hollywood collapsing with a new generation of, I don't know, man, it's just so powerful. I know it's probably out of line nowadays. It is out of line nowadays. It was out of line back then. But that mentality of power and the
Yes.
member and this new generation and the behavior and the jealousy and the control. It just 2, 3 minutes, but it tells a lot about TV history there.
Ruben, you're so right, and I'm so happy you noticed. And like that's exactly what we're talking about. You know, J.K. Simmons playing Milton Berle is a representation of all old television. He represents radio, he represents vaudeville, he represents also misogyny, he represents ego, he represents all these things. And you know, this is a moment where you have Chevy Chase, who, you know, is riding on his ego right now because he thinks he's the next thing, and he has to have this one-on-one moment. And what does Milton Berle do once he's been beaten up? He does the only thing he can do. He pulls his dick out, you know. And when you see that and you think about everything that's happened in the last few years with Me Too, you go, oh, this is something that never changes, you know. That when they start to, you know, feel like they're losing their power, when they feel like they're losing their relevance, they hold on to the last thing they can. They literally just pull their dick out. And I love the vulnerability of that scene, and I love the way that Corey Michael Smith plays it, because Chevy's a very tricky character to play vulnerable, because he's never vulnerable. Chevy always has 10 layers in front of him. Chevy never lets you see him. And Corey finds a way without dialogue. It's just in the way that he smiles and the way that his eyes get glassy, and you see him get scared even though he's not presenting any of that. It's such a tricky piece of acting.
What I love also, it's besides of this chaotic moment and craziness, Lorne Michaels' character takes 5 minutes for himself. He goes out. He needed
Yeah,
those 5 minutes.
yeah,
It's like a recharge. And I
yeah,
think we all need those 5 minutes in our life in
yep.
whatever we do. I'm glad that you put this in the script. I'm glad that because some directors just want to keep the audience up there, up there. I have up
Yeah.
there, but you took 5 for all of us, and I appreciate that.
Even John Wick takes a break, you know?
Yes,
And I find that when I'm on set, sometimes I either know to go to craft service or the bathroom. And it's not because I'm hungry, it's not because I need to pee. I just need 5 minutes for my brain to stop and think about what I'm actually doing. You know, we heard this story about Lorne Michaels meeting Alan Zweibel in a bar, and it just felt perfect. And I saw photos of John Belushi skating on the ice rink in his bee costume, and I was like, oh, that's gonna be perfect. And then Peter Rice, our producer, said, you know, within 10 years of this film, we lose John Belushi and we lose Gilda Radner. It'd be beautiful if there was a scene with the two of them. And that's when that idea came together.
thank you so much for that. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Ruben,
Thank
the
you so much.
best. I'll see you around.